My fellow Africans, Pan-Africanism must be a must for every African. The spirit of Pan-Africanism must be injected in the minds of all Africans in order for us to be totally free from depression, dehumanization, extortion, neo-colonialism, one-sided profit riches, and so on. The Pan-African fight had never been an easy one. Many patriotic Africans had long lost their lives in the fight for liberation. Some were forcefully executed and some died out of frustration. All of them were successful because they were able to pass on the genetics. Legends like Marcus Garvey, William Edward Booker Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah, George Padmore, Hakeem Adi, Julius Kambarage Nyerere, Leopold Sedar Senghor, Malcolm X, Thomas Sankara, Jomo Kenyatta, Barbara of Sierra Leone, Kailondo, Sengbe Pierre, and so on. If we are preaching unity among us today, they started it centuries ago. They passed on the Pan-African spirit to us, so it is onus upon us to continue raising the awareness and put our unity into action. Every African must be willing to die for this fight. We must teach our children the history of Africa. We must tell them how their ancestors were treated. We must tell them the wrongs they did so they will not repeat them. We must be devoted in preaching Pan-Africanism like any religion or form of worship. We must maintain its core values, principles, and doctrines. We must prioritize Africa. We must love what we do and what we have. We must be independent. We must silence the borders between African countries and thrive to use one currency. This is a cause we must be willing to die for. It is a cause we must be willing to live for. Malcolm X stated clearly, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. And here is a case we do not want to fall for anything. The Pan-African fight is different from racial discrimination. The Pan-African fight seeks to achieve a sense of brotherhood and collaboration among all people of African descendants, whether they live inside or outside of Africa. We must take or be exemplary decisions and build a reputable future for our children. According to Jomo Kenyatta, our children may learn about heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves architects of the future. Infrastructure is not a recipe for development, but the renewal of the mind, the ability to think deep and figure out things differently. Our role is to ensure that every African receives a solidified education or Pan-African education. If the awareness is not there, our skyscrapers will be misused and anything good created will not last for long. We must ensure that our people in the interiors of Africa act equally like those in big towns and cities. There is no time to waste. We must either unite now or perish forever, said Julius Nyerere. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. engraved before death, and I quote, "We must learn to live together as brothers or we will perish together as fools." Dear Africans, the fight for African unity must not be trivialized. It must be prioritized. It must be carried out with the absolute atom of our strength. We must appreciate ourselves, especially the unflinching efforts of the contemporary Pan-Africanists. Let's be cheering them up for staying resilient to the cause. Patriotic Africans like Julius Salio Malema, P.L.O. Lumumba, Paul Kagame, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Colonel Assimi Goïta, Ibrahim Traoré, and whosoever that pursues Pan-Africanism. Fellow Africans, please let us keep telling the world that the execution of the 14-year-old George Stanley will never be forgotten. George Floyd, Muammar Gaddafi, Patrick Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, and so on. Most importantly, we will never stop talking about the transatlantic slave trade. The days when Africans were possessed as common objects. If Africa is poor today, as the whites claim, slave masters and colonialists bear greatest responsibility. If you subject someone to slavery for over 400 years working only for you, what do you expect? The person does not have time for themselves. We are not talking about 400 days. We are talking about over 400 years. In all these years, Africans were building other continents, and up till date, we are empowering them. So they do not want us to be a united continent. They want us to be in divisions so that they can have their way in. But it is high time we conquer division. It's now time we avoided factionalism and embrace African unity.